There's a few indicator plants that I use, and so can you, that tell us spring is here and food is near. Most of the plants I'll be covering are not only useful indicators, but completely edible as soon as the snow melts.
So here's 4 indicator plants that tell you it's time to go foraging. Chickweed is a small, low-growing spring annual. Not only that, it's easy for any beginner forager because you can find it in your backyard. So let's go out back and see if we can find some.
Chickweed are often decumbent, growing along the ground at first but turning upward at the tip. You may notice it standing more erect where vegetation is dense. The leaves are pretty basic, with no teeth or lobes, and the surfaces are completely hairless. They also have a few secondary veins arising along a depressed mid-vein. The best identifying characteristic are the flowers, which are surprisingly similar among the various subspecies. They typically begin to bloom by the middle of spring just before dandelions, so keep an eye out. They're symmetrical with 5 sepals and 5 white petals, and a bit deceptive at first glance. This is because each petal is cleft nearly to the bottom, so that at a glance there appears to be 10 of them. The flowers are borne individually on very thin pedicels or in sparse clusters with forking stems. A helpful identifier for chickweed is a single line of hairs that runs along the side of the stem. They're incredibly small, but once you get an eye for them, they're extremely useful when identification is questionable.
While there's many subspecies of chickweed, there is one common lookalike to take note of: scarlet pimpernel.
Also called poison chickweed, a rather ominous exaggeration as it's only mildly toxic. It does, however, contain small traces of notable toxins, and if consumed in large amounts, it can be harmful to both livestock and humans.
At a glance, it does resemble chickweed, but a closer look, the flowers are quite different.
They're broadly ovate, not cleft, and pink to red color. They also don't form in clusters like chickweed, which can help further distinguish the two before they truly set bloom. Lastly, scarlet pimpernel tastes unpleasant. So if your chickweed doesn't taste as good as it normally does, it's probably old scarlet. Remember that there are over 30 varieties of chickweed in North America alone, each with their own unique characteristics. So they're all completely edible and highly nutritious, but there are subtle variations that you need to keep an eye out for if you care to differentiate them. The most common variants include common chickweed, an annual species which actually covers 3 main species, water or giant chickweed, which is another annual species but not native to North America, starry or giant chickweed, which is actually a perennial native plant of the southeast, and stitchwort, which is more tolerant to grow in rough conditions.
Chickweed peaks at the height of spring, late April through mid-May for me here in the Midwest. So this is when you'll want to harvest the green, starting at the tip and going all the way down as far as it's tender, usually a couple inches. Just know where you're looking because the amount of direct sunlight they get can extend their season or shorten it, just depending. You can eat it raw, just like this. Very subtle, sort of sweet taste. Pretty good.
The simplest way to harvest chickweed is to grab a pair of scissors and snip away at the canopy or top few inches of the patch. Just be wary of dirt or bugs you might collect in the process, so be sure to wash them off once you get inside. Fresh chickweed goes good on anything from salads to smoothies. You can't really go wrong. I tend to just add it to whatever I'm making in the moment, just like these eggs.
So next on the list are cress plants in the brassica family. In other words, these are mustards like the relatives kale, cabbage, and broccoli. So a popular cress you probably have in your backyard is hairy bitter cress. This also goes by pepper cress or land cress. Super versatile. And the best time to forage for it, like other cresses, is in early to mid-spring.
The many leaf stalks grow from a basal rosette and can reach about 4 inches long, being sparsely hairy, with several more leaf stalks growing from the main stem. The flowers are very small, white, and have 4 petals and will bloom as soon as early spring, while the seed capsules are still forming. Each leaf stalk has 5 to 9 paired leaflets, and the largest unpaired leaflet is at the tip of the stalk. Flower stalks will grow up to 10 inches tall. When seed capsules are mature, they can explode and spread the tiny seeds far from the parent plant. While the flowers and flower stalks are edible, they may seem a bit tough compared to the more tender leaf stalks and leaflets.
A little spicy. To gather hairy bitter cress, you can really just grab the whole plant when it's small like this, but when you find bigger plants, you'll want to just take the top parts as that'll be the most sweet and tender.
To gather the hairy bitter cress, just pluck the leaves for an on-the-go snack or simply lift up the cluster of leaf stalks and cut them with a knife near the ground. You can then wash the greens and pick through them, discarding any organic matter, yellow leaves, or tough leaves inside. When looking for hairy bitter cress, remember that it's often considered an invasive lawn weed as it will form dense mats of rosettes over an area. So start by looking in disturbed areas with full to partial sun, such as around garden beds and in planters like here, and around bare field edges that receive ample moisture or shade. It helps to look in bare soil areas with little to no competition from native grasses and other aggressive weeds, as hairy bittercress is rather small and needs that lack of competition. Despite its tiny stature though, its eagerness to be one of the first weeds to poke its head through the thawing spring soil can make it surprisingly easy to spot once you know how to identify them.
Another very similar relative to hairy bittercress is watercress. Perhaps the most popular of the edible cresses, watercress is a hardy creeping perennial that can be found pretty much anywhere there's cold moving water. You'll notice here, this is pretty stagnant, but I know every once in a while water does come through here, through a little stream that's connected to a bigger river.
Fresh watercress is commonly used as a salad green and sandwich filling. It's also been widely cultivated and available as a commercial green in some areas. For example, in early 1900s in Madison County, Alabama, a watercress pond became the largest producer of watercress in the country and led the area to be known as the watercress capital of the world.
When looking for potential grow sites, try starting in early spring, starting with the rivers and streams, and then moving towards the cold springs, shallow ditches and ponds, and you should be able to find some. Just know that the colder and purer the water, the better your chances. It typically grows from 4 to 10 inches high and is at the perfect stage to harvest around late spring, though you can harvest it in late winter to early summer. This example right here, I'd probably wait maybe 4 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, and then come back and harvest this. It's spicy, crunchy, and stuffed with tons of bioavailable water that make it one of the healthiest plants in the world. Like most cress, watercress has a very unique plump look to them, as you can see here. This is pulled out and it's not wilting. It's still very plump, full of water. The leaves also have an alternate pattern here. It consists of 2 to 8 oval leaves. I can show that here. With one larger leaflet at the end, up here. So the leaflet edges are sort of wavy. Again, I'm trying to show that up close here. Tacky to the touch. And you can eat the entire part of the plant minus the roots. When I'm harvesting these, this example aside, I cut above here, usually leave about 1 inch above the roots so it can regenerate for next season. So this is a good example of the effects of partial sun and full sun. So you see this patch right here receives partial sun. Moving over here, this patch, which is more in a stream versus a standing water. You can see it's a lot taller, probably on average 2 to 3 inches taller. That's because this is more in this clearing, this opening here, and gets more direct sunlight. All right, so this one right here is direct sunlight, and this one's partial shade. Size comparison right there. So you really have to consider where you're foraging, how much sunlight it gets, when you want to go out and forage them. It's a huge factor.
Though you typically want to harvest watercress before it begins to bloom, it can help to know what to look for if you stumble across it later in the season. The blooms possess small white 4-petal flowers with yellow stamens. The flowers grow in long clusters along the stem like many other mustards. It flowers from March to October. Just like hairy bittercress, they add a peppery bite to raw salads and can be cooked with soups or in recipes like other greens. I prefer to add them to sandwiches, big salads, or use as a side with potatoes or rice, and just eating them raw is the best way to go in my opinion. Just be sure to collect from uncontaminated sources.
This prehistoric plant is called a skunk cabbage. More specifically, an eastern skunk cabbage. You know that because they're purple, the western skunk cabbage will be yellow. Very easy to differentiate. Now, if you've ever walked through a wetland like this in late winter to early spring, you've probably seen or at least smelt this plant. No doubt the name comes from when you crush these, especially the flower heads here. Yeah, definitely smells like skunk. And this is that little center part of the flower, usually covered in pollen early spring. Ants, beetles, little insects will crawl up in here and pollinate them. They're scattered all across here. So as you can see, I do a lot of fishing. I'll go out late winter, early spring, and these are littered across the riverbanks, even when there's still snow on the ground. So they truly are the first thing that pop up in the spring.
The skunk cabbage is a flowering perennial plant, and as I mentioned, is one of the first plants to emerge in the spring. This is due to its remarkable ability to produce heat that allows it to emerge and bloom even when the ground's still frozen. During the winter, when temperatures are freezing, the flower buds can warm up to 70 degrees Fahrenheit, which melts the snow around the plant. Because of this, the first parts of the plant to emerge are actually the flowers, characterized by a mottled maroon hood-like leaf called a spathe, which surrounds a knob-like structure called a spadix. The spadix is actually a fleshy spike of many petalless flowers. As the flowers mature, the spathe opens more to allow pollinators such as flies, ants, and carrion beetles to enter and pollinate the flowers at ground level. Eastern skunk cabbage can be found throughout Canada and the northeastern United States, west to Minnesota, and southeast to Tennessee and North Carolina. The western variety is found in California, Idaho, Oregon, Washington, Montana, Wyoming, Alaska, and British Columbia, though I'm sure it extends far past these territories.
So depending on the region, skunk cabbage emerges from the ground from late February all the way through May. And even these ones, you can see this one's leafed out, right? So this probably emerged, I'd say mid-February, early March. They really do pop up quick and go bad just as quick. While skunk cabbage is very quick to lose its annual leaves, these pollinated flower heads will turn into their own berry clusters, forming next year's skunk cabbage. An interesting fact, skunk cabbage can actually live up to 20 years. Not this one. Due to their burning sensation when eaten, most animals avoid them, though it's known that bears do nibble on them. And actually Native Americans use them for coughs and headaches. Actually, for a period of time in the 1800s, skunk cabbage was used as a drug called dracontium to treat various ailments, allegedly. And if you're brave enough to forage skunk cabbage, you'll want to go for the leaves. Just know they are quick to rot, so you have a very tiny window of opportunity to get out there and get you some.
While most foragers will agree that this plant is inedible due to its calcium oxalate content, there are reports of people successfully eating this plant without any negative side effects. It just takes a little bit of time, energy, and effort. When processing the plant, you'll want to remove any of the leafy green matter, leaving just the pale yellowish hearts. This is because even after several boils, if there's green left, it will leave a burning sensation from that calcium oxalate in your mouth. After several water changes, it's recommended to then cook the hearts in the oven at 380 degrees Fahrenheit for 10 minutes. In theory, this allows the heat to break down those molecules which cause the burning sensation. And while this likely destroys much of the nutrient profile, this could be a lifesaver in a desperate survival situation if you can get a fire going. Otherwise, it's more of a novelty.
Growing among skunk cabbage, we have ramps or wild leeks. Now these perennial plants are completely edible, top to bottom, even going into the roots underground. And they have a comparable taste to green onions, garlic, or shallots. Now this is getting to a better size though. You'd want to wait probably a couple weeks before you forage this one, especially like this one right here, super young. If you're just taking the top, this is fine. This is actually perfect because it'll be nice and tender. Yeah, it's got that subtle, very subtle garlicky smell. Not quite as strong as your chives. An example like this, I would just take the tops, leave the roots, or wait a couple weeks and come back. So you can see the leaves have no foliage. Just buds starting out. And yet, the allium are everywhere. Truly the first thing to come up, besides skunk cabbage. Wild onion. These bulbous perennial plants are in the allium or onion family, and they're actually super easy to find thanks to their predictable grow zones and distinct onion garlicky smell. Not to mention they're extremely abundant across most regions, even well outside their designated grow zones, so keep an eye out. Fun fact, the allium family actually consists of over 500 species in northern climates. All the varieties I'll be talking about are not only edible, but delicious. While I suspect these are wild onions, they could be wild chives. It's just hard to tell until they start to bloom. Wild chives are often domesticated garden chives, but there is a North American variety that makes a great trailside snack. The domesticated varieties are easy to find along roadsides, disturbed areas, and all your typical spots you'd find typical onions. Once wild chives begin to bloom, look for a dark purple pink flower head as opposed to wild garlic, which will be more that light pink to white color. That's how you know for sure what you're dealing with. This is really important to look for the flowers because both stems are hollow. Wild chives also have a small bulb, but it's typically not worth digging up as the top greens are a lot better. These riverbanks are where you want to start checking. Start there, then hit the swamps, and then the woods.
While the large family of alliums makes them easy to find, It can also make distinguishing the subspecies and identifying their subtle differences quite tricky for a novice. Here in the US, the most common of these species is probably field garlic. This plant loves growing in sunny or semi-shaded developed landscapes, parks, and probably in your own backyard. In fact, if you spend enough time outdoors, it's nearly impossible to miss this invasive plant. Field garlic is actually a winter perennial, going completely dormant in the summer, but growing the rest of the year. Hence why it's one of the first plants you'll see growing early winter or spring. It grows in clumps, and you'll often notice it by its curly, twisted, dark green leaves that rise a few inches above the turf around it. It's able to get a jump start on its competitors due to its ability to photosynthesize the second the snow melts. Each mature bulb produces a single unbranched flower stalk known as a scape. The flowers that emerge from these edible scapes stand 18 to 30 inches tall and are white to light pink with 6 parts. Unlike field garlic, our native wild garlic, also called wild onions, are rarely found in urban settings and does not make it west of the plains. It can be found in both woods and fields in rich, moist soil, especially in low but not swampy woods. So also try looking in lightly used pastures, floodplains, and rich valleys. Reaching southern Canada and abundant across the eastern US, it's locally quite abundant and starts off in early spring, similar to field garlic. It's noted that the young leaves of wild garlic are fleshier and U-shaped in cross-section, plus much more tender for table fare. Generally, there's 3 leaves per main stem. It blooms in late spring, standing 14 to 30 inches tall, with similar flowering characteristics to field garlic. The bulbs of wild garlic are small and have a wonderful flavor when used as a garlic substitute. They're more mild than domestic garlic, and any tender part of the plant can be processed as well. Almost everyone who's compared wild and field garlic will tell you they prefer wild due to their tender and milder flavor. Wild chives are often domesticated garden escapees, though there is a native North American variety which makes a great trailside snack. Natives are thinly distributed in more grass-like areas, unlike the very dense clumps of stems and leaves produced by garden chives. Though they can be difficult to differentiate from other mentioned alliums, as I said previously, it helps to compare the bulb size or simply wait for them to set bloom.
Here's a cool example. You can actually see the bulbs exposed. That's because right on the water. So you'll find these growing where there's a lot of erosion or disturbed areas. See, I just totally dry.
Ramps, aka leeks, aka wild garlic, are similar in flavor profile to wild garlic we just discussed, but that's about it. Ramp bulbs start out as small white beads in early spring, but will morph into bladed clusters by late April if left undisturbed. They grow in low-lying, well-drained soil, typically in partial shade. Once located, they're extremely easy to identify by their wide leaf structure and classic onion garlicky smell. There are 2 toxic look-alike plants to watch out for when foraging for ramps. These are lily of the valley and false hellebore. Lily is actually related to ramps, making them scary similar, but they do possess thicker, more wavy leaves and lack that classic onion garlicky smell. They also grow at the same time in similar locations, adding to the difficulty. Again, all you have to do is check for roots and that telltale oniony smell. The same process applies to poisonous false hellebore. Due to their popularity among foragers and other outdoorsmen, when harvesting ramps, it's never a bad idea to just take what you need when you need it. Plus, like all wild snacks, they just taste better fresh. I like to find the densest part of a cluster and thin them out methodically, typically from the center, working my way outwards. This way I'm improving the health of the plants and thanking them for providing me with free food. Though many plants disappear in my mouth on site, the ones that make it back get washed and chopped up for various meals. I prefer to separate the leaves from the white stems, going all the way down to the roots. The stems go great on pizza and in soups, while the leafy greens go great in salads, chopped up in omelets, or served whole as a delicious side. Now that you know a couple species to keep an eye out for, I hope you're feeling inspired and confident to hit the woods this spring and find some food yourself. If you like this content, feel free to share, like, and subscribe, as I'll be posting more just like this in the future. And as always, happy foraging.